and he cut the helm of Naboo in half, so he appeared more human. And so Percival Pop was part of that general softening of the tone of comics in general. And throwing out the names Ostrander and Mandrake again, in one issue of the run on the Spectre in the 90s, they actually brought Percival back for one issue, and it was really neat to see how they reinterpreted his character, while at the same time keeping all of this Golden Age Spectre history intact. Man, can't wait to talk about their run. It was so good. Now, in Morphin Comics issue 75, an interesting thing happened. It's kind of funny, because today, Comic Hits issue 75, and that's a big deal, or it's a big celebration. I don't know that anybody was celebrating issue 75 back in the 40s, but in issue 75, Jim Corrigan was resurrected. In this story, the criminal was an artist who would paint a person's portrait, and then he used a metal artifact to literally steal the person's soul and transfer it into the painting. And then he would abscond with their valuables, their papers. And in issue 75, the artist set his sights on Clarice Winston, painted her picture, transferred her soul into the painting, and then made off. And in the course of getting rid of his car, he ended up leaving the metal artifact in the car, and he pushed the car over the same bridge from which Jim Corrigan's body had been pushed way back in More Fun issue number 52. And Corrigan could see that Percival was starting to put two and two together and was heading towards that bridge and would likely jump into the river. And Corrigan feared that Pop would discover the barrel, which still contained Corrigan's dead body. And so Corrigan, in the guise of the Spectre, made it to the bottom of the river first, where he saw the barrel and his decomposed hand reaching out of the barrel, and said, "Oh, there I am, my body." And he made an interesting appeal to the voice, and the voice said, "Yes, Corrigan, you have done excellent work here. You have the permission." And the Spectre was imbued with the power to resurrect Jim Corrigan's body. And so there's this neat panel where the Spectre disappears and Corrigan comes out of the barrel, fully restored to life, all of his wounds healed, that suit he was wearing to the party restored. He comes back up to the surface, marveling in the fact that he's taking in air, and there's the artist, along with Pop. And the artist shoots Corrigan, and Corrigan, in his mind, thinks, "I've just come back to life, only to die again." But instead, he's not hurt, he's not killed. And Corrigan realizes that even though he's been resurrected physically, he still has the Spectre's powers. So he takes down the artist, and Pop chalks it all up to the artist being a lousy shot, or maybe Corrigan having some extra padding under his suit. And so the story continues. And so it's interesting now, because for a few issues, Corrigan had to deal with Clarice still following him. And this time, Corrigan realized that maybe he could have a life with her now that he was fully human, but he still had his mission as a Spectre because he realized that he still had all the powers. So for about 15 issues, an interesting status quo change for Jim Corrigan in that he's human, but he can also transform into the Spectre and continue his mission. Now there's another status quo change for the Spectre in Morphin Comics number 90. Clarice had been gone for 10 issues now, so a couple of years in real world time. And Jim Corrigan enlisted in the army and received his papers to report for duty and to go overseas. So in this issue, we see Corrigan separating from the Spectre. And he even had an interesting discussion with the Spectre as he's packing his things. He was saying, it's odd not being able to see the Spectre, to see myself anymore. So that led to the question, was this Jim Corrigan, who was going off to the army, simply a reanimated husk that held Corrigan's personality and memories? Was Corrigan's soul and the Spectre? What was going on here? My thinking is that Corrigan was simply being written out of the story. And Spectre was going to become this entirely separate character. But it created an interesting issue for future writers and how to deal with this. And of course, I'll talk about it more when I look at the Spectre in the Silver Age of comics. But with Corrigan leaving, the Spectre became an invisible partner to Percival Popp. In fact, right after Corrigan departed, the Spectre decided to follow Popp and see what he was up to. And even in More Fun number 90, Popp could hear the Spectre, but he couldn't see him. So for a short time, the Spectre became the invisible sidekick in his own feature, and Popp was the star of the title, in which he came across as this savant, in which he tried to help solve a case, but in the end ended up getting himself almost killed, only for the Spectre to make an invisible save, with the cops arriving and saying, wow, this Popp guy looks and sounds like an idiot, but he took down the bad guys. What's with this guy? So Super Cop became less of a sarcastic nickname for Popp. However, in later issues, the Spectre would become visible to Popp, as well as to other people, to the villains. They would look and say, oh no, it's the Spectre, look out. And again, there's no mention of Corrigan in these later issues. But still, given that in More Fun number 90, the Spectre becomes invisible once Corrigan departs, that set an important precedent for later stories wherein when the host separated from the Spectre was no longer able to walk the earth or interact fully with humans. The Spectre needed a host in order to be visible to others and to interact with them. So again, really neat stuff that Siegel and Bailey were coming up with, setting up some interesting stuff for future writers and artists to explore. Well, as happened with the majority of superheroes in the Golden Age, there was a gradual decline of the Spectre. His final issue was in More Fun Comics number 101. That issue also marks the first appearance of Superboy, and that is available as one of those Millennium reprints from 2000. So you can probably find the Millennium edition of More Fun Comics 101 for a few bucks online, or at a local comic shop, or at a convention. And from there, I mean, the majority of superheroes disappeared from comics as more and more fans became interested in romance comics, war comics. Funny how easy it is to read war comics after your country has won a war. And of course, westerns became all the rage in TV, movies, and certainly in comic books. So while the Spectre didn't go out with a great send-off in the Golden Age, the character would certainly be brought back, resurrected, one might say, in the Silver Age, with an interesting take on the character as seen in Showcase and the first volume of a Spectre ongoing series. So I'm looking forward to talking about the Spectre in the Silver Age somewhere down the road. Just to give you guys the heads up for episode 120 of Comics in History, I'm actually planning on looking at a really neat ongoing story that was written by Captain Canuck's original creative team of Richard Cumley, George Freeman, Claude Saint-Aubin. It's called Beyond. It was collected in trade about a couple of years ago, and I've had the trade sitting around for that long, and I think it's high time that I got around to reading Beyond and talking about here on the show. So that will probably come your way sometime maybe late August, early September. Again, in the meantime, you can reach me at comicsandhistory@gmail.com, or you can check out the Comics and History Facebook page and click like so that you can follow news about upcoming show topics and show releases. Not sure if you can hear Victoria laughing in the background, but that's my cue to say that until we meet again, this class is dismissed.